Welcome to the Transosseous update for the modern-based era in 2020. We've got a great faculty here tonight, ranging from thought leaders and scientists and academic guys to private practice surgeons, and they all have their own unique perspective, and we hope to have a good discussion. Thank you for the attendees for your time joining us tonight. In your busy life. I know it's hard, but hopefully we'll keep it dense information that's practical and good. Make sure that you're using the chat function if you want to ask questions. We'll try to get to them. And the purpose of this meeting is to educate about new developments in this technique, which has come back around. I believe this is one of the first open discussions and really in North America since sort of the early 2000s when the technique started. Hopefully we'll dispel some myths and do some education, maybe talk about some future directions. And there's a bunch of ways we can go with this in the future. Okay. So Brett Sanders, I'm in a private practice group in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I do have a relevant disclosure. I'm the founder and inventor of a transosseous repair device. And we're sponsoring this. This journey for me started with the problem of value, which we saw coming in fellowship. This concept was brought about by Michael Porter at the Harvard Business School. It's defined as outcome over cost per episode. There's been a lot of theoretical discussion about this, but it's had some trouble kind of getting into practice. In the States, this manifests as bundled payments. Bundled joints have been around for a long time. Our international colleagues will know that there's single payer systems, so there's value propositions there. Simultaneously, we've had technological convergence and commoditization of anchors. So basically, an anchor is an anchor, and there's at this phase, and there's really not much difference in them functionally. So this is an opportunity. And at the beginning of this, I really felt that we had at least non-inferior outcome, if not superior, and definitely we had cost effectiveness with these techniques. E.A. Codman, was the first transosseous cuff repair, first cuff repair 100 years ago. The father of value-based medicine and evidence-based medicine. And he was measuring value with cuffs. And that didn't go so well for him in his time, but now his principles have come back. So I'd like to introduce this concept of the rotator cuff repair cycle, which I believe is Castagna's concept. And there's basically a logical cycle back to transosseous techniques as they evolve. So, we started with this transosseous repair, and this transosseous cerclage effect is extremely powerful at reproducing the footprint. And this is kind of what we're chasing, basically. And then we went to transosseous mini open with or without augmentation. So you can do that with buttons, tapes, screws, plates, anchors. There's a bunch of ways to skin that cat. We can talk about that. But we came to anchors, mini open with anchors, and the transosseous equivalent. And then when we came into arthroscopic technique with single anchor repair, this is where we got stuck here. The failure rates, clearly went up with Yamaguchi and Bishop's study, 90 and 80% failure rates at that time. And given these were double loaded anchors, and maybe triple would be better. We didn't really know about the crimson duvet at that phase, but it clearly worsened outcomes here. And so we kept working, and the industry kept chasing this transosseous cerclage effect. How can you do the same thing transosseously with anchors? So we added a couple thousand more dollars of anchors and bone voids and inert material in the healing zone and overly stiff compression, decreasing vascularity, causing an induced failure mode, bringing up a new failure mode, the type 2 failure. And that's kind of where we are now. And this is driven more by biomechanics and technology and chasing the transosseous cerclage effect than it is by biologics or outcome. And so this is where I spent a lot of my original work on these hybrid techniques, trying to step surgeons into full arthroscopic techniques. So this allays a lot of their concerns and stepping into that sort of like mini open to arthroscopic, until we can get people comfortable with arthroscopic transosseous techniques and then getting back to doing the whole thing without anchors. It's my position and belief now that, transosseous cuff repair is the gold standard. It is and was the gold standard. And we know that all the giants of shoulder surgery have used this technique for years. we definitely have a lot to talk about in terms of cost and value. The biology of the healing side is exceptional, and we've got access to stem cells. The biomechanics is basically the same or superior depending on what you read and who you talk to. And the pain is reduced, level 1 evidence on that we can talk about. And if you talk about biology and pain, just if you look at these, look at the tendons on MRI, you get this excellent healing response without the Sugaya 3 failures at the articular margin, and it's really a biologic repair. Revision considerations are excellent. You don't have any anchor voids or hardware to miss, and you can do any technique you want. Outcomes have been excellent. There's not a whole lot of studies, but there are long-term studies now, and it has synergy with all kinds of other technologies. So there's a lot of ways to go with this. Historically, there's been a lot of people that have made a run at this, and I think that lends to its credence. I will call to your attention, if you haven't read Kuroda in Japan, he's got a great 380 people, I believe, series with 94% healing rates, and really an interesting technique, but a great clinical series as well. This is just a slide to show, this is from JBJS, Dirk Stingel, pointing out that most technologies that we introduce don't have much difference. And the things that we think are game changers are really not, when you look at them objectively, they're really, because of sealing effects, it's very, very difficult to show, a true difference. So I think this is kind of where anchors and tunnels are. It's kind of like down at the bottom right, locking and non-locking bolts and trauma. It's going to be very hard to show a difference there, except on cost. So what is the ideal repair? This is just principle-based thinking, mostly from Gerber. You want high initial fixation strength to resist ultimate and cyclic failure. I think you can see those repairs have a capability of achieving that. We want to prevent gap formation and reduce shear forces. As you can see, the contour of the greater tuberosity there with these tapes in this massive 3-tunnel tear here, we're reducing the shear force. But we also want to go a step further. We want to reproduce the anatomy, and this South Korean paper shows how when you get bird beaks and dog ears in your repairs, it's really because you're trying to repair you don't have enough fixation points. You're trying to repair a cuff that needs 6 anchors with 4 anchors, and that's why you get deformities. We want to avoid these bone voids with revision considerations. We want to be mindful of this medial stress riser, which is creating type 2 failures and causing tendon transection, which is a catastrophic failure mode. Of course, we want good outcomes, and we've got one of the experts here with 2-year ultrasound follow-up he'll talk about. But I'd like to suggest some new ideals as well. So I'd like to suggest that we should be paying attention to improved biological healing assessment on MRIs and perhaps ultrasound with Dr. Cruz here. We want to be mindful of bringing in biology, and here's an SCR that we did. We want to use our patches and augments and biologics and reduce the cost ceiling for those. We want to improve the vascularity, and there's clear evidence on that with transosseous techniques by ultrasound. Of course, we want to recapitulate the anatomy as we can easily, but we want to avoid these pressure spikes, and we want to increase our fixation point density. So with that said, I'll say after 8 years of going deep on these concepts, there's a couple of things I've learned about adoption. The things in red: safety, efficacy, theoretical concerns, biomechanics. This is what we talk about, and they're important, but that's not typically what moves the needle on adoption. It's mostly, I've found ease of use, familiarity, incentive, payer mix, health system, but a lot of psychological factors as well: risk tolerance, dogma, and a lot of social aspects. So I'd like to give a shout out to our Italian colleagues, Dr. Castagna, and they're doing a lot of basic science for transosseous techniques out of Italy. And they've been very open-minded on the science behind this and driving this as a worldwide grassroots phenomenon.